Most dating advice focuses strictly on the words coming out of your mouth, but it completely ignores the subtle energy you are projecting. You might have found yourself on a date where you followed every rule in the book, used the right openers, and kept the conversation moving, yet you still felt her pulling away or looking bored. This happens because women possess an evolutionary social radar that is far more advanced than most men realize. This radar isn't looking at your outfit or your resume. It is scanning for something called incongruence. Incongruence occurs when your external actions don't match your internal state. When you use a pre-planned line or a mental script, your body language, eye contact, and vocal tonality often fall out of sync with your words. You might be saying something confident, but your nervous system is broadcasting anxiety or a desperate need for her approval. Her intuition picks up on this mismatch almost instantly, often before she can even explain why she feels uneasy. To her, a man who is performing feels unpredictable or manipulative, even if your intentions are perfectly good. This is why the nice guy who tries too hard often loses out to the guy who seems like he isn't trying at all. To bridge this gap and stop the cycle of missed connections, you have to stop trying to prove that you are enough. When you spend the whole time trying to be impressive, you are essentially telling her that you don't believe your true self is valuable. This creates a wall between the two of you. Genuine attraction only begins to grow when you move toward being congruent, which means your words, your actions, and your actual feelings are all aligned. This level of authenticity is rare, and it starts with mastering two specific words that most men either misuse or avoid entirely because they are afraid of losing control of the interaction. When you master these two words, you stop being a performer and start being a presence. You move from someone who is reacting to her every move to someone who is setting the tone for the entire encounter. This shift changes everything because it allows her social radar to finally relax. Instead of sensing a threat or a performance, she senses a man who is comfortable in his own skin. That comfort is the foundation of true magnetism. It allows you to lead the conversation naturally and creates a space where she feels safe enough to actually be attracted to you. The first word that transforms the energy of a conversation is interesting, but the real power lies in the intent behind the word rather than the syllables themselves. Most men fall into the habit of being approval seekers during a conversation. While a woman is speaking, they are rarely actually listening. Instead, they are mentally rehearsing their next sentence or frantically looking for a way to agree with her so she will like them more. This constant need to please makes the interaction feel like a repetitive interview or a performance rather than a genuine connection. A grounded man uses the word interesting as a tool to pause the world and slow the pace of the interaction down to his level. To see how this works in real life, imagine a scenario where a woman tells you she is thinking about quitting her stable, high-paying corporate job to travel the world. An approval seeker would likely jump in with something safe and boring, like saying that sounds cool and mentioning how much he loves traveling too, before asking where she plans to go. He is desperately trying to find common ground to keep things comfortable. A grounded man, however, takes a different approach. He pauses, maintains steady eye contact, and simply says, "That is interesting." He might follow up by noting that most people would never take that kind of risk, then ask what specific thing is making her want to walk away from her life right now. The psychology behind this shift is profound. When you say that is interesting, you are non-verbally communicating that you are not there to entertain her, and you are not there to be entertained by her. Instead, you are there to witness her. This approach moves the conversation away from surface-level chatter and into the realm of true depth. It shows that you have the confidence to challenge her narrative and the curiosity to explore the motivations behind her choices. You aren't just reacting to what she says, you are analyzing it and inviting her to explain herself to you. Research into human connection shows that when a person feels truly heard and seen, their brain releases oxytocin, which is often called the bonding hormone. By using this word to dig deeper, rather than just nodding along, you stop being just another guy she is talking to and you become a safe harbor. You create a rare environment where she feels she can drop her social mask and show you her authentic self. This creates a powerful emotional anchor as she begins to associate your presence with a sense of being understood on a level that most people never bother to reach. The second word that is vital to understand is often the most difficult for men to say, and that word is no. From a young age, many men are conditioned to believe that being agreeable is the only way to be likable. They grow up thinking that if they just agree with a woman's opinions, help her with every favor, and make themselves available at a moment's notice, she will eventually reward that behavior with attraction. In reality, the exact opposite happens. When you constantly say yes, you are signaling a total lack of personal territory. You are showing her that your time, your energy, and your beliefs have no fixed borders, and that you are willing to move them the second someone asks. This is a critical psychological point because if you have no boundaries, you essentially have no self. To a woman, a man who agrees with everything and has no limits feels like a mirror or a shadow rather than an individual. There is nothing for her to grab onto and nothing for her to be attracted to. Attraction is like electricity. It requires two distinct poles to create a spark. If you merge your identity into hers just to please her, you remove all the healthy tension and resistance that keeps interest alive. By trying to be her perfect match through total compliance, you actually become invisible. It is important to realize that a high-value refusal has nothing to do with being a jerk, being arrogant, or playing games. It is simply a reflection of the fact that you have a life you actually value. For example, if she asks for a last-minute favor that would force you to cancel your workout or interrupt your professional responsibilities, and you drop everything to accommodate her, you have sent a very clear message. You have told her that your own goals, your health, and your time are worth zero. You have shown her that your life can be easily interrupted and that you don't respect your own schedule. A man who can calmly and politely say that he cannot do something today because he is busy with work or a personal commitment, but offers to meet on a different day when he is truly free, is infinitely more attractive than the guy who rushes to say yes in 5 minutes. The first man demonstrates that he is the captain of his own ship and that he has a mission and a purpose that come before seeking temporary approval. This creates a sense of respect and stability. When she sees that you have the backbone to protect your own time, she instinctively feels that you will also have the strength to protect the relationship and stand your ground when things get difficult in the future. To really understand how this looks in the real world, let's look at a case study involving a guy I used to know named Marcus. On paper, Marcus didn't necessarily stand out. He wasn't the loudest person in the room, he wasn't a professional athlete, and he didn't have a massive physique. Despite that, he carried himself with a sense of gravity that people noticed immediately. He had this quiet certainty that made everyone around him feel like he was the one in control of his own life. This wasn't because he was trying to be alpha or dominant. It was because he simply didn't outsource his happiness or his schedule to anyone else. One evening, a woman Marcus had been seeing started to test his boundaries. This wasn't necessarily malicious, but rather a subconscious way of seeing if he was as stable as he appeared to be. She became intentionally difficult about their dinner plans, changing the meeting time 3 different times throughout the afternoon. Finally, she sent a message asking him to drive 40 minutes out of his way to pick her up because she just didn't feel like driving herself. Most men in this situation would either get angry and start a fight, or they would cave in and make the drive just to ensure the date still happened. They would react because they are terrified of losing the opportunity. Marcus took a completely different path. He didn't get frustrated, he didn't lecture her on being respectful of his time, and he didn't send a long, emotional paragraph. He simply replied by saying that the new plan didn't work for him that night and suggested they just do it another time when it was easier for both of them. He delivered a clear no without any bitterness. After sending that message, he didn't sit around staring at his phone or waiting for a reply. He went about his night, focused on his own interests, and completely detached himself from the outcome of that specific date. He was perfectly fine with the idea of not seeing her that night because his self-worth wasn't tied to her presence. About 2 hours later, his phone buzzed. It was an apology from her. She admitted she was being difficult, and instead of him driving to her, she asked if she could come over to his place instead. This happened because Marcus demonstrated what psychologists call a stable center. By being non-reactive, he showed her that he was a man of his word and that his boundaries weren't up for negotiation. He didn't need her to say yes to him in order for him to feel like a man of value. When a woman encounters that level of emotional independence, it creates a deep sense of respect and security. She realized that Marcus couldn't be manipulated or pushed around, and that made him 10 times more attractive in her eyes. The final step in mastering these concepts is moving from theory to action through what is known as the security framework. The biggest mistake men make is waiting until they are sitting across from a woman they really like to try out these new behaviors. Because the stakes feel so high in that moment, the words often come out sounding forced or awkward. To avoid this, you need to begin with small stakes practice. This means applying these tools in your everyday life where there is no pressure and no fear of rejection. By the time you are in a high-stakes romantic situation, these responses will have become a natural part of your personality, rather than a tactic you are trying to remember. You can start immediately by using the word interesting with everyone you encounter, from your barista and coworkers to your close friends. The next time someone tells you a story or shares an opinion, resist the urge to just nod or give a generic response. Instead, look them in the eye, say that is interesting, and intentionally wait 2 seconds before asking them a follow-up question. This brief pause is where the magic happens because it shows you are actually processing what they said. You will be amazed at how quickly people open up and begin to share more deeply when they feel you are truly present with them. This builds your presence muscle so that listening becomes your default setting. At the same time, you should perform a personal audit of your current boundaries. Take a look at your upcoming week and identify where you are saying yes to things you actually want to say no to. Perhaps it is an extra shift you don't want, a social outing you are too tired for, or a favor for a friend that inconveniences you. Practice delivering a calm, clear no in these low-stakes environments. When you get comfortable setting boundaries with people you aren't trying to attract, you remove the emotional weight behind the word. By practicing in these everyday moments, you ensure that when you eventually have to say no to a woman you are attracted to, it feels natural, strong, and authentic rather than reactive or aggressive. Ultimately, you have to realize that attraction is not a mysterious or random occurrence. It is a predictable biological response to strength and presence. When you choose to be interested instead of trying to be impressive, you are demonstrating an elite level of presence. When you have the courage to say no, you are demonstrating internal strength and self-respect. The goal is to stop performing for others, stop chasing validation, and start standing your ground as a man who knows his own value. As you begin to live with this kind of security, you will find that you no longer have to work so hard to get attention, because your authenticity will naturally draw people toward you.